Okay, greetings everyone. Welcome to Patent Insider Secrets, Patent Insider Tidbits. We are live today. We're going with talking about the news of the hour. Mr. Kanye West. And All right, we're here. We're here. We're live. We have some technical difficulties there for a second, but we're here. So, did Kanye fumble the bag? What we're talking about today. We have we're going to go through this in kind of detail, and in a way you can look at it, understand the whole, you know, whole situation right now, and understand the intellectual property aspects of it as well. So we have, if you saw the reel, then you understand that the reason we chose this song. Uh, we're going to answer that question: did Kanye fumble the bag? Right? We're going to answer the question: did Kanye fumble the bag? But first and foremost, shout out to Morehouse College homecoming weekend last weekend. Um, we're going to talk in detail about the intellectual property aspects of this. Right? This actual situation, we're not going to talk about the politics. We're not going to talk about the mental health. We're not going to talk about uh, a lot of the other aspects that are popular in the news right now. We're going to look at this as an IP example. It's a live example, so that's in the news. We're going to look at the intellectual property aspects of it. How do we look at this as a patent insider? How do you look at this? And what lessons can you learn as a business, as a strategist, as an intellectual property expert? What strategies can you learn from this to actually help you take advantage of this situation, learn from it in a way that you can actually get some very valuable insight. So we talk about this. We're going to share our screen. We're going to go through some things, like I said, in detail. For those of you on Instagram, you're going to have to join us on YouTube. We're live on YouTube. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook. So go to Facebook, Patent Insider. Go to LinkedIn, Patent Insider, or go to my page, Tariq Najila. The name is here. Or go, again, you see us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. From there, we're going to go through this in detail. So there's a lot of stuff in the news, right? We've heard Kanye West has been dropped from all of his deals. He's lost, the headlines are saying he's no longer represented by an agent. His agency dropped him. He's lost his brand partnership with Yeezy and Adidas. He's been dropped from that partnership. He's been dropped from the Gap partnership, dropped from Balenciaga's partnership. His school, Donna School Academy, is closing. All these things. So it's a lot of stuff going on in the news. We know he made some anti-Semitic comments, and also had some very I don't want to call it erratic, but just behavior, this questionable behavior that he's had recently in the news and in public. And so in response to those outbursts, we're seeing the unraveling of a lot of his intellectual property and his wealth and his status. But what we want to focus on is looking at this. The question is, did he fumble the bag? You're getting Instagram back on again. Don't know what's going on with the technical difficulties. It keeps jumping off, but we're back here on live again. We're talking about the discussion today, the IP discussion. Did he fumble the bag? Did Kanye West, artist formerly known as Kanye West, did he fumble the bag? The other question we ask is, who owns his intellectual property? Who owns his intellectual property? And what IP lessons can we learn from this? So let's see who we have in here. Let me know if you have any questions as we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're letting people join the chat, and we're going to go ahead and start going through the process of looking at this in detail. So first off, we got to understand, what is intellectual property? What is intellectual property? Intellectual property is thought property. So we're talking about ideas. We're talking about thoughts. We're talking about concepts. We're talking about know-how. We're talking about experiences. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about creativity, creative concepts. And as we spoke on our last live, we talked about intellectual property is an intangible asset, meaning something that is not an actual physical asset initially, but it has value. It has value. So we have these intellectual property assets, right? Intellectual property needs to be thought of as assets. If you watch Earn Your Leisure, you know about assets over liabilities. Assets are things that add value. Liabilities are things that subtract value. And so when we look at this from a strictly intellectual property perspective, Kanye West is a prolific creator of intellectual property assets. What do I mean? So when we talk about intellectual property assets, these are thoughts, concepts, ideas that can be crafted and created, and usually we have legal tools that we can create around them to protect them. Once we create those legal tools, we often think of the IP or the intellectual property in terms of the legal tool that protects it. For instance, a copyright. A copyright protects authorship, ownership. So we talk about copyright protecting authorship. When I look up Kanye West, and I'm going to share this on the screen. If you're on IG, you want to follow us on YouTube, you want to follow us live on LinkedIn or Facebook, because we're streaming live and we're going to share the screen there. You can see. I'll see if I can turn the camera around and show you the screen as we go through it. But when we look at copyrights, there are, when we look up, he has thousands of IP assets in his name, right? So when we look at copyrights, it said copyrights are ownership, right? Copyrights are deal with ownership or authorship. So we know that he got his start as a producer, a music producer. So as a music producer, like I said, when I type in the name Kanye West in the copyright search engine, we find over 844 hits. So 844 copyrights. And so let's see if we can get this screen on here. If you're on IG, like I said, try to follow us on YouTube. Like I said, we will put the screen share. We'll turn the camera around and try to show you. But you definitely, if you can, get on so you can see what we're showing. So if you look here, if you look in the background screen here, and let me see if we turn this around. Let's see, turn the camera around. All right, so I don't know how much of this you can see here, but that's 844 hits under the name Kanye West in copyrights. And so when you look at this, you're seeing a number of things. One of the things you're seeing is that so these are songs, these are music productions, sometimes video, but these are things that he's created. And so if you look at it, it tells you the title of the copyright. Some of this is visual material. So, and then the claimant, is who claims authorship. Okay. And so some of these things, he may be a part of it, but like we look at this is Stronger. This is music, is the date. And we see that the claimant here is please give me my publishing ink. So it's a publishing company. We also find here published works, photographs, diamonds from Sierra Leone on the Rockefeller as a claimant. So, we see that here. One thing about his songs, when you look at this, Heard Him Say, Touch the Sky, sound recording, Rockefeller Records, and it says that, it's an employee. So he's an employee of Rockefeller Records here. The College Dropout Anthology, Rockefeller Records is so it looks like from this we see a number of things. We see that he has intellectual property here. He's a Deuces remix by Chris Brown, sound recording. Kanye West is under the contents. Sony Music Entertainment owns it. This one, he has these singles here, music, sound recordings, where he and it looks like Gucci Mane and others are part of the ownership. So when we look at did Kanye fumble the bag, let's just first, again, we're looking initially at his intellectual property, looking at his copyrights. So I said 844 copyrights when I pull up the name Kanye West, and we see them owned by a number of different actors, okay? If we look up the name, so he has a holding company called Mascot Holdings. It has an interesting name. It has an interesting name of the spelling of mascot. But you see here, like Mascot Holdings has copyrights, and this is actually, the claimant is the Gap and Mascot Holdings Inc. So this is with the Gap partnership. He has visual material. He has, this is for the Gap Yeezy puffer jacket, blue, the Gap Yeezy hoodie, red, the Gap Yeezy hoodie black, Gap Yeezy hoodie purple, Gap Yeezy hoodie beige, Gap. So this is for a line of clothes. So there's 9 under the name Mascot Holdings. If we go to Kanye Omari West, which is his government, as we say, his legal name, full legal name, we have a number of things where we have a lot of his songs. We have some other things that he's registered here, and we see various owners. What you'll find is that on a copyright, if you sample music, you have remixes. Then not only does the song itself appear there, but also your everyone you sampled from will also be tied to your name, and they are claimant on your particular creation. Same is true here. Now, when I typed in Kanye West or Mascot Holdings, I got 50,000 hits in the copyright database. And this, some are owned by his publishing company. Please give me my publishing. Again, some of these things are if he sampled or he had someone take a photo of him, that can be registered as a copyright. So it's not all necessarily his works, but it's what's associated with it. So what we see here is that he is a prolific creator of copyrights. Lots of copyrights. There's some other things here that we aren't as popularly known. That's one type of intellectual property, copyrights. Kanye West also has trademarks. So when I looked at his trademarks, let's see here. Search. So we're gonna go back to that. But so when we look at his trademarks, right? Go to the trademark office. We see that he. Okay, let's see if this is working. All right, there we go. We go to trademark search. He has 565 trademarks associated with Mascot Holdings and 11 trademarks under Yeezy LLC. So let's look at what some of these are. So we look up Mascot Holdings, and like I said, we're sharing this on the screen. Feel free to ask questions as we go through this. But this tells a picture. This tells a story that's beyond the headline. We talk about intellectual property of Kanye West. We talk about him being a billionaire. We talk about him having these resources. One of the things we'll also find is that he is very serious about his intellectual property. So let's come back over here. Let's see if we can put the shared screen back up. Let's see. So we put the shared screen back up, and hopefully, if you're on the IG, we'll go ahead and turn it around again so you can see it. But when you look at his so like I said, here we have 565 trademarks owned by Mascot Holdings, which is his holding company. We look at this, and we have, this is just the first 50, but he has, he had a shirt on the Drink Champs interview, Trey Mendez. That's a live trademark. That's for, Yeezy verse. So this is clothing. So he knew he was going to be on a show. He trademarked Drink Champs. So this is October 9th. He filed the trademark, and he went and put it on the shirt and wore it. So he's someone who knows how to capitalize on attention in his brand and leverage. Now, what we see here, we see a lot of trademarks. I mean, you have 565. And when you go through them, what I found is that for each album or each, I don't know if you want to call it an album or his marketing that he's going to do with his next rollout, he has a set of trademarks for that. And I guess that's so he can capitalize on his merchandising. And then if we keep going through this, what you'll see is that after a period of time, if he's not using that trademark, he lets it die. So like he has, here we say Yeezy is dead, not the Red Octobers. So these are different products and things that he had. So out of these 565, all of them are not current. A lot of them are dead marks. So I say about half of them are dead marks. Actually more than half of them are dead marks, meaning that they're no longer active. But it goes back some years, many, many years from the beginning, even prior to us knowing of him. The Glow in the Dark tour, all these things. Yeezy spelled with an I. When he came out, Ham with Jay-Z, that song, that's trademarked. So these are things that, getting out our dreams, that's a dead mark, but, he had that trademark. We had the pastel, all these different things. He has trademarks. So, and then again, for the Yeezy LLC, he has these trademarks here. So there's a little different. Only a couple of these are live. 2020 vision. So when he's wearing those hats for 2020, all these types of things, he's someone that when he's marketing and promoting something, he puts that under a mark of some sort. Also, what I didn't know when we looked this up, he has patents. So if we look at this, let's look at this. He has these are the Yeezy sandals. He has a design patent on that. So these are the Yeezy sandals. He definitely has a design patent. He has a number of design patents on. Let me see here. He has another pair of sandals, which is like a different pair of slides or a similar pair of slides. And there was one more here. Let me go back. Pair of sandals. Oh, and a pair of high heel shoes. This is another one. So these, we've seen him in these fashion shows. So he has these 3 design patents, which is on this design of shoes. I could not find his any patents on the Adidas. He has an application here for this I thought was really interesting, the utility patent for this. If we look at this, this is an entertainment space, right? And so what he wanted to do was put screens in, above you, in front of you, on the ceiling, on the sides, and make a transformative experience. So if we look at this, he wanted to be able to show a transformative experience. And it's something that was he was pursuing, I guess, around the time of, I believe it was like the Glow in the Dark or one of these other shows that he had, and he was trying to create this experience. The patent has since been abandoned, but so he never did actually get a granted patent on that. But we have someone here in Kanye West who is very prolific in creating his ideas. Prolific in creating his ideas and then taking action to protect them. Now, we're going to answer the question, did he fumble the bag? So we're going to answer that question last. The first question we can answer based on our research and our diligence is, did he, who owns his intellectual property? So as we look at this, we see that as a music artist, he signed a distribution deal with, he signed a deal with Rockefeller Records. And then he signed, looks like, distribution deals. And so his production, his art is owned by others. So he gets paid from a label. We're familiar with musicians and how they get paid. They'll get a deal, and then they either sign a distribution deal. And I think a good example is look at independent artists. I was thinking about Master P, maybe a J Prince. Those have independent deals where they're able to own their rights, and they pay for all their marketing, all their artist development themselves out of their own budget, and they basically have a split. It can be like 75-25, 80-20. But usually when you come as an artist, you don't have an audience, you don't have the business acumen to have the marketing, to build these things. And so you come in and the artist does that, the label does that for the artist, builds the artist up, markets the artist, and then recoups all the money they've invested and the artist gets money along the way, but it's usually a very lopsided deal. So it looks like that seems to be the case with his music. And so what I did find is there's some singles and releases that seem to be independent, that he's the claimant on it. He's the one that seems to own it. But many of them are through record labels or entertainers or those who sample. So if he sampled the work, the one who made the original recording can make a claim against you. And Kanye is, because of his production style, he's notorious for getting sued for copyright infringement, meaning using another artist's work without permission. So this is the type of protection you get with a copyright. So going back, what we can see is that even looking at this is not we looked at the trademarks. We look at the trademarks. So this is looking at the copyrights. We look at the trademarks. We find that there are a number of trademarks that he has, and a lot of dead marks. So while you're in the market and you're moving product, you want to have that trademark protection. But it seems like as soon as that's done, then that trademark protection, is not as concerned about maintaining it. So that's and it's common. There are companies that come up with a line of clothing, a line of shoes, and they'll have the trademark on that thing. And once that line, is defunct and no longer is evident, it'll go away. So that's one thing we can learn about just looking at this is for example, this Yeezy right here. This is a character mark for clothing. This is from 2013. And he did it. It's a live mark. Let's go back. But then we look here, he has a Yeezy, Yeezi, which is for clothing as well, which was for 2 years prior. And it's a dead mark because he decided to go with that name. So when we see someone who has a team of attorneys or legal professionals that go after protecting his IP, or at least making sure he gets intellectual property in the beginning. Now, what I did find when I looked at everything, I went back through the whole patent file, and that's something that we'll share. When you go through the whole patent history, and you look at his patent applications, and you look at everything, you find that follow through and follow up is not that strong. So while it's very easy to make sure that you sorry, I get some technical issues. Hopefully they'll come back. Okay, I think we're here. So did Kanye fumble the bag? That's what we're talking about. And before we answer that question, we wanted to dig a little deeper into the IP in and of itself. We wanted to see what type of intellectual property does he have. We want to understand who owns what. And so when we dug into that, and so we're gonna share this on the screen here to show some of this, some of his patents, some of the details there. So when we look at this, and if you're on IG, we'll turn the screen around so you can see this. So we have a pair of sandals here, which is, like I said, pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting to see who has patents. This is the Yeezys, Yeezy slides. So there's a design patent for them. And he has another design patent with almost, this is for a pair of high heel shoes, design like this. And then he has another one that almost looks exactly like the other pair of sandals here, slides. But these are design patents. These are particularly for the protection of the shape of a design. He sees a lot in fashion. A lot of fashion designers get design patents if they have a product or unique shape. Now, what was interesting, he also has a utility patent filed, and I said this was very interesting. So when you look at the patent application, this was, like I said, he had a surround screen, not a surround sound, but I guess maybe in combination with surround sound, a surround screen experience. It's called a multiple screens for immersive audio-visual experience. And they were not successful in getting this patented. There's some prior existing technology that was there, but as you can see, this is pretty interesting. And he also had it as part of a stage show, it looked like. So this is, you see different types of imagery that can be used to make you feel like you're somewhere else. Just looks like you're underwater, uh, and it looks like he has, stage set up like this, audience, surround view of being surrounded by a number of screens. So I thought, it's creative. When he has a stage show, he has where he would be performing. So all these things are, like I said, quite interesting. At the end of the day, this was not a patent. Now, when we looked at this a little bit deeper, we looked at the history of this. Like I said, this was an abandoned application, and this was abandoned back in the date of the abandonment was 2015, and they filed it. So they worked at this for a number of years, at least 2 years from filing to, and it has a provisional application as well. So really about 4 years on this, and we're able to get a patent with it. But he has a team that basically helps to make sure that his IP, he has a fighting chance to get his IP protected. Now, we're going to answer the last question. Like I said, we don't have a lot of time here. We want to make sure we go through this. We started a little bit late. If you have any questions, definitely, put them in the comments, put them in the chat. The question is, did Kanye fumble the bag? So, in a manner of speaking, it's really hard to say. We had to say we don't know. Somebody said no. Rich Richardson says no, he didn't fumble the bag. Why do I say that? Because your IP is not just, it has a value, but the value is actually what you are able to do with it. What do you want it to do for you? I'll never forget, I was at an event at the USPTO at the patent office, and it was an invention event and a lot of inventors, and I was sitting next to an inventor, and he was like, I just want to get my patent granted. I was like, well, what do you want to do with the patent? He seemed to misunderstand the question. He said, I just want to hang it on my wall. And I was like, if you have, tens of thousands of dollars to spend to hang something on your wall as a memorial, a memento, that's not really what a patent is for. That's not what IP is for. Intellectual property is mostly out of the Department of Commerce. Now, the copyrights are outside of the Library of Congress because the Library of Congress wants to register everything that's authored in the United States of America. So the Copyright Office is part of the Library of Congress in the archives. And so it used to be part of the Patent and Trademark Office, but it's separate. It still has commercial use, commercial value. Now, when we're looking at patents and trademarks, they exist in the Department of Commerce. Why? Because the Department of Commerce is for what is moving goods and services. And the idea is that you're using these things to produce revenue for some commercial use, right? So this is something that's absolutely important. So what you want to do is, the best use of IP is what you want it to do. For the gentleman that I was sitting next to at the patent office that day, he just wanted to hang it on his wall. So if he gets a patent, hangs it on his wall, it's accomplished what it's supposed to do. Even if it costs him $25,000 to do it, that's what he wanted to do, sit it on his wall. But the purpose of a patent is not to hang on the wall. It's to actually have an intellectual property right to then commercialize. And with that commercialization, you also have to have a way to enforce and defend the right once you get it. So we say intellectual property is thought property. Thought property is an intangible asset. Once you secure the legal tool to protect that asset, whether it's a copyright, a trademark, a patent, whether it's your legal trade secrets and internal external policies that you have, in addition to that, that's just the legal protection. That's covering your risk areas. That's really out of I categorize it as 3 pillars of intellectual property. The first pillar is just identifying those assets and making sure you have something to protect them. Now, once you have the tool in place to protect them, there's 2 other pillars that you're missing. The second pillar is enforcement and defense. And, if you go on our on our YouTube, you go on our social media, you'll see we have plenty of posts about Kanye West. And not just because we're picking on Kanye West, but he's often in the news for copyright infringement because the way he makes production, he produces songs, he uses others' beats, others' creations. When he does that without permission, it usually puts him in the middle of a copyright infringement suit. Most recently, I think we had a post about him being sued by a pastor where he sampled them their voice or part of their sermon in one of his songs on the Donda album. So that's something. He has a defense team because they used to deal with that often. Or if he's not the actual owner, if it's Sony Music Group, if it's Rockefeller Records, if it's one of these other companies, Island, Def Jam, these are all the ones we found, a lot of different ones that own his music. They'll have attorneys that deal with it because and part of I've heard from people that work in the music business and is that when you have an artist that is frequently dealing with copyright infringement and has suits, that's part of the budget. So the artist is paying for that. It's coming out of their advance or whatever they get. They're paying for because it's part of the way that you do this. You incur this risk, so that comes out of your budget. I don't know if that's a particular case with Kanye West, but I know that is something that happens in the music industry with these contracts. And so we looked at, like I said, he's prolific in terms of creating a number of IP assets. He's created thousands of intellectual property assets. Not all of them are live right now, but like I said, to have 3 granted patents at least. I wasn't able to find the designs, but with shoe companies, Nikes, Adidas, Reebok, Under Armour, they usually have design patents, trade dress, trademarks on all of their brands and shoes and things of that nature. So it's quite highly likely that exists, but just not in an easy way to find. So for the video today, we didn't do a whole dive and due diligence. What we did do is some basic research so that we can have an intelligent conversation about what we can find out. So once you have once you have your IP determined and you have the tools to protect it, then you have the enforcement and defense strategy in place. The next thing is your commercialization strategy. And that's really where I think, based on the research, we can really have something to comment on with Kanye West. What I found when we did the digging on ownership, just from what we can see from the live records in the trademark office, what we can see from the patent office, what we can see from the copyright office, what we are able to see is that while he's a prolific producer of content and creativity, he's produced all of these works. He does not always own all of them. Does not always own all of them. And why is that problematic? So when we looked at it, he has a holding company. There are 2 companies that I could find that are associated with ownership from the search that we did. Again, if you dig deeper, there may be some other shell companies and things like that. But he has Mascot Holdings, Inc. Mascot Holdings, Inc. owns the trademarks to all the brands, the Yeezy brand, the clothing, all the names of the brands that he has. Those are trademarked, either names and logos. So those are trademarked. Yeezy LLC also is another company that holds also trademarks. And when it comes to its copyrights, some of the copyrights are owned, like I said, many of them, most of the ones I was able to find are owned by others, owned by other music companies, owned by Universal Music, Sony Music Entertainment, Def Jam, Island Def Jam Music Group, Rockefeller Records. And so there are only few that I see with his actual name or ownership either, associated with him. So he's someone that produces this content, produces his creations, but he does not always have ownership. So let's go to our last thing. We'll pull up our last comment, and then I want to open it up for you all's questions. Let's see if we have any questions here. I have this. They said, did Yeezy fumble the bag? I said, yes, he did. Unforced error. I can definitely agree. It seems like an unforced error, but we also don't know what he was trying to do. So part of it is that intellectual property does what you need it to do for you. Like I said about the gentleman who was very clear about basically saying that he wanted to get a patent hang on his wall. As long as it hung on his wall, that was good for him. It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about selling a product. Now, Kanye West has been, all of this seems to have started with some disagreement about the future of his relationship with Adidas. There have been several posts that Kanye West has made in social media since he got back on social media about being displeased with the direction that Adidas was going with his Yeezy product. They had a change in leadership over his project, and he was disparaging. There's a lot of comments and things made in the public that he was displeased with that. And the posture that it seemed to be, at least based on, what was presented in the media and what Mr. West's comments were in responses to it, is that they basically felt like they held the leverage in the contract and the agreement, and they didn't need his approval to make the decisions. So that leads me to think that perhaps he doesn't own his intellectual property. And so there was a post that was made yesterday on Kanye's Instagram, and it's since been taken down, but it looked like it's a conversation with him and a legal representative of some sort that said, as far as Adidas, you can start making new designs for shoes and clothing immediately. As far as Gap, your non-compete agreement ends on December 15th, 2022. What does that mean? So this is talking about IP commercialization, which is really one of the strongest pillars. What do you need IP to do for you? In this particular case, Mr. West owns this. He signed a partnership deal. So we think about partnership deals. Again, I think we can all relate to music or artists. We hear about musicians get a bad deal. The musician is the one that's the creator, the one that's coming up with the art, the one that's creating the songs, the music that has the talent and all of these things. And then they are also the ones that putting their name out there and putting that work in. Now they partner with a label. A label is supposed to have the marketing budget to put them and increase their platform, increase their reach, so that if they have 100 or 100,000 people that like them, now they have 1 million people that can get their content, or 5 million or 10 million. The larger the label, the larger the platform, the larger they're able to grow. And so this is those deals are lopsided. Those deals are quite lopsided like that. And that's they're lopsided in the sense that the deals are lopsided in the sense that they are we got stuff popping up here. They're lopsided in the sense that the one that has the leverage is able to make the greater rules. Now in fashion, it's somewhat different. In fashion, you have creative designers and you have partnerships, usually be term agreements, but there's, and this is true in patents as well. But you can do something that's called, I can sell you my IP rights. You can do whatever you want with it. If a partnership, though, usually it's some kind of give and take. So that means that, I sell it with a license back. I want some money up front, but then I want the ability to still sell and own my own designs, but you can sell them too. That's one way. Another one is to say, sell, you keep it, just give me some money on the back end. That's typical. That's like endorsement deals. It's like an endorsement deal. Endorsement usually like a brand ambassador and that's not what Kanye West was in this case. A brand ambassador, someone that comes on, like Ciroc, I think, with Puff Daddy. He's a brand ambassador. He doesn't produce the beverage, but he is the one that promotes it and gets he's paid to promote. He's a paid promoter of the beverage, but he's not the producer or the owner of the beverage, full owner. And so maybe he gets some ownership perks as a brand ambassador, but it's not his original initial business. Well, in this type of scenario with the partnership deal, usually you can say, okay, whatever I create in this is mine, but for the terms of the partnership, it's ours. But once this partnership is over, I retain my designs and you go back to where you were, the way you were when you came here. That's one way to do a partnership agreement. Those are very, protective clauses because usually the partner has the leverage, but you want to protect your leverage is your creativity. So what it seems like, based on what the legal counsel, if that's Kanye's legal counsel, what they said, that with Adidas, you can start producing new designs immediately. And that what's been reported is that Adidas says we're the sole owner of the colorways, the Yeezys. So it seems like everything that was produced with Adidas belongs to Adidas. It doesn't belong to Kanye West. That's a very critical mistake in terms of IP ownership. Now, maybe he wanted a greater percent of profits. He wanted to be a billionaire, so he sold his creativity. But there's no guarantee that what he creates now, the new designs, will be as, profitable as his previous designs with Adidas. If they're able to still sell it, he's competing with himself. So now with Gap, this is a non-compete. So he produced clothes with the Gap. He created a trademark. He has a copyright of the logo, Yeezy, YZY, looking like the Gap. So he has that. It's a partnership. But the non-compete ends in December. That means the Gap can sell what they want in whatever terms of the agreement. Once that period of time is over, the contract is over, he can begin producing clothes, I guess, based on those designs. It wasn't as specific. So we're really trying to guess at or tease out what's been presented to the public. Did he fumble the bag? I would say that if you're squandering or dropping, you have multiple brand partnerships, but it seemed, I would say yes. On the outside looking in, it looks very clear that this is something that is not advantageous. But we have to see what happens, see how it plays out. It's really hard to speak on something that's a live event. We see this, I didn't want to speak on this until its conclusion. It's just concluded. It seems like these partnerships are over. And so that's why we're making a point of discussing it right now. But when it comes to, what is the overall objective? When I say the overall objective is, we're looking at the overall objective. What if he saw these were bad deals he wanted to get out of them? We definitely got out of them. Now, how we got out of them, and is it advantageous to him? The Adidas one definitely doesn't seem to be advantageous to him. If he does, he can create new designs, but everything he created with Adidas stays with Adidas. And working with Adidas and partnering with Adidas is what made him a billionaire. That doesn't seem like it's, that seems like a fumble. That seems like you have the ball, you're running the yard, you're right before the goal line, and you fumble, and the other team gets it, and you never get it back. Now, the game isn't over, but for right now, it definitely looks like a fumble. That's an opinion. Because, again, IP has to do what you want it to do. And the goal of the intellectual property is to make sure that it does what you intend or need it to do for your business and for your position. It's hard to kind of see how this is advantageous for his position. But again, we don't know what the objective is. So you're going to see different opinions. I have two people in the comments. One of my friends says, no, he didn't fumble the bag. The other person says, yes, unforced error. So both of these things are true based on the perspective, but we really won't know until we have to talk to Kanye West. And I don't know anyone that wants to talk to him right now, get all this, while this is fresh. But, if you wanted to get out of a contract, this is sure one way to do it. I won't necessarily advise it. I mean, there can be renegotiations, but if you realize you signed a bad contract and you don't have any leverage, this is definitely, I would say, a way not to do it. But if the end result was you just wanted to not be in contracts with anyone, you definitely have been successful with that. So if that was the objective, then that's not a fumble, that's intentional error, not an unforced. It's what he wanted from the very beginning. We don't know. So I hope that gave you some insight. Again, we got to look through his intellectual property. You got to go through his IP. See, like I said, it's I didn't know that Kanye West had patents. At least 3 patents. And I would, likely more, but just based on what we prepared for this brief live, we only found 4. But there may be others under different holding companies, especially a lot of the things he created with Adidas. I'm pretty sure those have design patents, if not some utility patents, because he used Adidas Boost technology and used it to make the Yeezys. And, to have over 570 trademark filings, half of those, still being live trademarks, to have or be associated with over 50,000 copyrights is quite amazing and prolific. Now, some of that is, not all his creation. Some of those things are things that, again, like he created, or maybe it's about him. Maybe it's a photograph of him. Sometimes that's when you're a celebrity, someone takes a photo, then you'll be named in it. but they own the photo. They can claim ownership of the photo, but your name will be used as a descriptor. So that will come up as well. So we look at that. Regardless, we've seen thousands of copyrights. So when it comes to producing music, all of that, he's been very prolific about creating intellectual property, and he has a good seems to be a team that helps him get the initial intellectual property filed. The follow-up, based on my research, it seems to be inconsistent with the maintenance of those. And maybe it's intent not to carry, outdated trademarks for old products. And then there's, several repeats as well. So that's also why have 40 different Yeezy trademarks, all spelled the same way, and many of them in the same classification. There's very slight differences. So that's it. We wanted to get some insight, but the main thing, many of us are not yet, billionaires like Kanye West or have that kind of platform. But what you do have is intellectual property. Intellectual property is valuable. You need to have a strategy to protect it. You need to have inventory of IP assets. You need to understand what they are. You need to understand the legal tools to protect those IP assets. And then you have to have a plan to enforce and defend those assets. And then you have to have a strategy on how to make money off of those assets. That's a bulletproof strategy. There's a bulletproof IP strategy. That's one of the things that we offer here at Patent Insider. We provide a bulletproof IP strategy for you based on the level of your business. We give this to you. And we're working on developing another way. I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs that, not necessarily want to come with it this way, but we're looking at another, I don't want to say too much about it, but we're coming out with something where, it's a standalone product that you can learn this as you go through it and do it for yourself and your business. So that's one of the things that we're working on, and it'll be coming, before the end of the year. With that, I want to say thank you for joining us, and now you in the comments, share, let us know, did Kanye fumble the bag?